There it is. Now I see all the inputs.
So wait, are we on video?
Yeah.
Yes. Camera's there.
I have a camera in front of me.
Lovely.
We're going to get a new backdrop eventually.
Yeah, I mean, that backdrop.
I have a tapestry I can bring in, but it's white, so I don't know if it'll help much.
So, welcome everyone. Do you want to check on your phone and make sure we're actually streaming live? So, welcome everyone to our first day in the new office. I apologize for the background behind all of us because it's drab and sad looking. My name is John Politsky. I'm the chief of Byte Size. That's my official title. It's fancy. I am here with Alicia Blackburn, who is MacGyver, also super official, and Meg Teddy, who is Megatron. We're very, very serious titles only here at the company. So this will be our first official streaming podcast of our Bite Size Book Club. Just to give everyone some background, this is the 85th time Alicia and I have restarted the book club, and this time we're going to do it. So if you guys have not watched our book clubs before, and of course you haven't because of reasons I've just given, we are going to be doing a few different formats. So we are going to be reading a few books a month. Right now we are switching between, we're going to be doing Stephen King chronologically. If you'd like to join us for any of these books, we're going to have them on our website, which is bitesizedigital.com. And you can go there, sign up. There will be links to join us. We were going to do some Zoom calls where we have other people if people sign up. And we are going to do some different series. So the first series that we're going to do is the Dresden series, which is Jim Butcher. And the first book is Stormfront, which will be the next fiction book that we read. And then we were supposed to do business books on a different channel, but it's really dumb to do two different book clubs. So we're just going to do all the books on this one because it's just easier that way. So we're going to be doing some nonfiction books. And the next nonfiction book is Get a Grip by Gina Wickman, which is a novelized version of Traction. Anyway, today our first one is Stephen King's first book, which is Carrie, as we all have the book. Meg and I have the same book.
Mine went back to the library.
Yeah. So this is Stephen King's first book from like 1976, which is pretty crazy. There were some things in the book. It's really funny when you read older books. For the most part, it's like fairly relevant and timely. And then you read some things and you're like, oh, it's the 70s, where they were talking about like things from the 50s and different.
For sure.
There's no technology. So I have some questions, and we're going to try to use similar questions, especially for all the Stephen King books. So first question I'll throw out to you guys is, what did you think of the book overall?
So I have very mild opinions about this book. I felt like it didn't actually tell a complete story.
Okay.
Maybe that was the format of it. And I find Stephen King trying to write from a female perspective very awkward.
It's also his first book.
Well, I'm sure you're a Stephen King fan.
Yeah.
So I don't know what your history is with Stephen King. This is only my second Stephen King book I've ever read. The first one was the TV show just came out.
So you read The Outsider.
Yes.
Which relates to this.
Yes.
Very interesting. 40 years later, he writes a follow-up basically to Carrie, which is the only other book you read, which is The Outsider, which is about kids that have telekinetic powers.
I thought all of his books were interconnected. I thought it was like
believe me, they are. You'll
Marvel
see
universe.
as we go through this. You're gonna be like, oh Jesus, same characters everywhere.
So The Outsider is the only one that I've read. And wait a minute, The Kids in The Outsider? What are you talking about?
Oh no, you know what? I'm thinking of something different. So The Institute
Yes. Okay.
is also a book about telekinetic powers with children.
Okay.
The Outsider
Is about, well, we'll get to
Yeah,
that
we'll-
when we get
yeah.
there. But I was just going
We'll
to
get
say,
to
so
that in a
that's
year.
the only
Yeah.
Stephen King book I've ever read.
Yep.
And for me, the reason when we like first said, let's read all by one author, that I like immediately said Stephen King, is as someone who reads a lot and has never read Stephen King, he's kind of like this person that you're supposed to read and everybody knows about him. And I've never had any desire to pick up a Stephen King
Yeah.
book. I don't think it's my genre at all. So I liked the idea that this would kind of force me to get into it. And I've seen the movie Carrie. So I went into it with kind of this predetermined idea of what it's about. I mean, I think it's a little impossible to skip out on the pop culture of knowing what Carrie is about prior to reading it.
Yeah.
And then when I was actually reading the book, I loved the format and the layout of the book, but overall, I have to say I was not actually a big fan. I thought I would love this book, and
Again, I go back to to me, it's having read a lot of Stephen King. This is not what you would think a normal Stephen King book would be. Stephen King's very intro heavy, very character heavy, where you by the time you get a quarter of the way into the book, you know those characters. You feel like you have a picture in your head of who those characters are. And I feel like again, this is his first novel that was ever published. So you're talking he was in his 20s.
Did you hear the history of when he wrote this?
Yeah.
I was just reading that. I thought that was, do you know the history at all? So he was super poor,
Yeah.
a teacher, living in a trailer park with his wife, Tabitha is
Yep.
her name. She's also an author, I think. And they had 2 kids, and he had written a couple things, but nothing had been published yet. And he threw this paper away because he didn't think he could tell the story of a teenage girl very well. And his
Hence
wife,
Alicia's criticism.
hence Alicia's criticism. And his wife dug it out of the trash can and took cigarette ash off of it and was like, "No, I think you should do this. I'll help you tell the woman's perspective," and forced him to do it. And then he ended up getting he thought he was going to make $20,000 off of it, and once it actually got picked up, at first he didn't think he'd make anything, and then he made so much more money on it, and it changed his life.
Yeah.
I find it really weird that he had help with the female perspective, because there were a couple things in there where I was like,
Well, you have to remember too, they were both very young. So
Yeah.
he's in his early 20s. His wife's probably in her early 20s. So they didn't have a whole lot of life experience at that point either. So it's interesting. To me, that was really interesting. So I didn't dislike the book. It was, to me, it's very interesting to see his very early writings because he hasn't really found his voice.
Yeah.
Interesting subject. I felt like the plot is interesting, subject matter is interesting, and you could tell it was a very early effort for him to tell a story.
I was reading a little bit about just other people's take on this book and things like that, and a common thought is how telekinesis is pretty common now in television and movies, and everybody's kind of aware of the concept. And when he wrote this, that really wasn't the case. And I don't know how factual this is because I only read it one place, but someone said that he got the idea from this book from a New York Times article that they wrote about. They believed this girl was telekinesis or had telekinetic powers, and they said that it was driven through her hitting puberty and all of this stuff. And that ended up being what they made the movie The Conjuring about or something. I have no idea how factual all that is. I'll have to look into it more. I just read the one article. But that's why he tied it into starting when she was getting her period. And I think it's supposed to be this whole coming of age story. But I don't know how successful I think that is. Because for me, when there's a coming of age story, it's supposed to be that you kind of overcome these things. And everybody talks about this being this great revenge story, but I don't really know I don't know. I don't know if I agree with all of that.
Well, that to me, I think is the part of the book that I like the most. So I agree, I think it's interesting to look at a book in 2020, in our perspective in 2020, looking back in 1976, right? So you're talking about a way different time in the world. And the one thing that I enjoyed about the book was it didn't have a happy ending. It's not like a traditional storyteller's approach to this is a wonderful coming of age and we hit this slope and we had adversity and then we overcame that. It was no, sometimes things just suck and everybody died and it wasn't pleasant and there was no real great thing. There was no great takeaway at the end. Her mom was evil, and everybody wound up being evil in the book.
There was a lot of cruelty for the sake of cruelty, I felt.
Yeah.
A lot of literature and movies that I've seen now, I feel like you can look at the bully or, whoever the antagonist is, and you learn their backstory and start to feel for them a little bit. And some of the characters in here, I just didn't have that. Like, I felt like they were just cruel for the sake of cruelty, and I felt like that made them a little less dimensional to me, or a little less interesting.
100%. I agree. So next question is, who was your favorite character in the book? Are you all right, Alicia?
We might not have. You guys aren't picking up on the board.
Do we not have audio?
It's coming through when I talk.
Okay, cool.
On
It's
here,
just-
anyway.
Yeah, on here it wasn't doing anything, so I was concerned. Sorry.
We'll
I
figure it
see
out.
the light flashing when you talk. I can't see anything for my own.
As long as John's seeing it.
Yeah.
Should be good.
Can you talk again, Meg?
Hello?
Yeah, it's catching you.
Okay. Sorry.
It's okay. Who was your favorite character?
Didn't really have one.
Uh,
I felt like, because, we, in a earlier incarnation of this book club, we read through parts of the Dark Tower.
Dark Tower. Yeah.
And, like, those, like you were saying, the characters are so much better fleshed out.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's not even
Whereas
funny.
this, it was like, the
There's-
characters were all very
There's some
shallow.
characters in this. It's very interesting to me because he is so, like, when you start reading, like, even when you read The Outsider, like, those people.
so well. I knew
Yes.
those characters so well, and I felt for some of those characters
Yeah.
so hard, and that's what drove me through that book. Even though I'm not the biggest supernatural
Yeah.
horror fan, I didn't really have that in this book. I mean, I guess it might be cliche to say, but for me, it was probably Carrie. I at least found myself rooting for her, even though she was still kind of a villain, and not kind of. She did these terrible,
Yeah.
killed a bunch of people and stuff. So I guess it would be rooting for her. Like Billy, like I said, I thought he was interesting, and you can see that he's really smart, but he was one of those people that I just felt like was so cruel, and I didn't understand why. And
Yeah.
that made me not like him as much.
Yeah, to me, it's like I think if you look at, if Stephen King wrote this book today, this book would have been 900 pages, and you would have gotten full backstories on every person. Like, I wanted to learn more about Tommy. He was kind of like collateral damage in this whole thing, and he probably was like a decent human being. And it seemed like, they talked a lot from Sue's perspective. And Sue seemed like she tried to be a better person.
Yeah,
They just didn't execute it as well.
At least she had, I felt like, at least a little bit of like a character arc where
A little
she
bit, yeah.
tried to improve. But yeah.
Interesting. All right. So next question is, who was your least favorite character?
The mother.
Yes, the
That's
mother.
pretty-
She's terrible.
To me, it was the mother, or like Chris's boyfriend, who was like super rapey and slitting pigs' throats, and he was just
Billy, right? Isn't
Yeah.
that one Billy?
yeah.
Yeah. Well, see, but my whole thing is, you could tell, since he was the one doing some of the things at prom and setting it up or whatever, that he was smart. But it's just why do you want to ruin this girl's life that you barely know? I just don't understand. And then
Ted Kaczynski was smart.
Abusing your girlfriend for no reason.
For no reason,
No
zero reason. Yeah, I mean, just
she sucks too.
she sucks hard.
Terrible.
Yeah. All right, so here's the next question. This is actually a pretty good question. If you could ask Stephen King one question about this book, what would it be?
I guess playing on what we just said about developing the characters more, who does he wish he devoted more time to in this book, if anyone? Is there a character that he wished he spent more time on?
It's a good question. Alicia, do you have one?
If he ever wants to go back and rewrite it.
Yeah, I know he's talked extensively about certain books and certain things, and there's times where he says I would never go back and revisit these characters, or if there were some characters that he didn't feel like he paid enough attention to. But again, this is so early on in his career that to me it's super interesting of what the thought process was behind it and everything.
Yeah, I think To me, it's interesting because, like, one of the reasons I never finish any of the stories I start is I always feel like I'm not a strong enough writer to do it justice, and that I'd end up wanting to go back and redoing it once I developed more skills, and there's never a story that I want to use.
Yeah, but I think
skills
that's a testament to his writing style. That I think everyone starts out that way.
Yeah.
And I think I think what happens is he talks a lot about it in his book In Writing, which I'm sure we'll read at some point, which is a nonfiction book, where he talks about just the craft of writing. And a lot of it for him is just discipline, just to sit down every day and write. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it's fine.
Well, I would be fascinated to learn more about his his whole practice in general. Since this book I read, he spent 9 months writing. And for Steve, like, to me, that sounds like nothing for a book. And for Stephen King, that's like a lifetime. I mean, he's written books in like an entire
I mean, he writes
day.
over a book a year. I mean, he writes a couple books a year. So, and I mean, he is.
So he spent a really long time on this book compared to what he normally spends. And it's, I feel like, way less fleshed out than.
Yeah, we figure we're going to get into some 1,000-page books relatively quickly, too. Like The Stand is probably a couple months away. And that book which is one of my favorite Stephen King books, that book is long. It's like 1,100 pages. It's very long. And that's a really good one right now with COVID. So next question is, do you think there was a message intended in the book? I mean, to me, overtly, like, it was a case. I mean, it started out being a case against bullying, and then it just morphed into everything is evil anyway, so it doesn't matter. It's a very nihilistic view.
What I find very interesting is that this was actually written pre-school shootings being a regular occurrence.
Right? Yeah, to me, I thought of that too. I thought when I was getting to the end of that book, I said it had a very Columbine feel to it.
Well, he said he based the Carrie off 2 girls he actually knew. Did you hear about that? And
that's interesting.
Or was it in the forward?
Yeah,
the book,
in the forward.
And so it definitely feels like he said how, like, he wished that they could have read it or known that it was for them or something. And so that makes me feel like it started as the whole, like, anti-bullying and, being aware of that. But I definitely don't think that was my final takeaway from this novel.
No, it really morphed off into, to me, it was kind of like it morphed off into like a testament of like the best, like almost like the best people or like the purest people. If you push them hard enough, everything's gonna turn. It's just gonna be bad.
Everyone has a breaking point.
Yeah,
yep,
it was.
That's a good one to put. That's a good takeaway.
Yeah, it is. That's a good one. All right. So next question is, do you have a favorite quote or a favorite part of the book? I really didn't have a favorite quote.
I don't know. I don't know that I did. There's nothing in this book that I'm like, oh man, I got to reread that, or I need to talk about this part.
I have a quote written down, but I don't know that it's a quote from the book.
What's your quote that you wrote down?
I can't read my handwriting, so.
All right. No, it's fine. Next one is, did the book change your opinion or perspective about anything?
No.
I don't think so.
No,
like, your takeaway, everybody has their breaking point, I think is something that has already been talked about or discussed. That's not brand new information.
And then obviously as we move through this, we will start ranking Stephen King books. So this one will be number 1 for a few weeks. Until we
I thought we were just going to like score them and see how they.
That's actually not a bad idea. So let's do that. So let's score it on a what ranking system would you like to use? Because he's got a lot of books, so we have to.
You know what we should right now? We should just like pause, and we should come up with like a Stephen King ranking system based on what we like, so that it's the same. Like,
so we'll do that. We'll come up with a system. Right now, this will be our number 1 book for Stephen King, which will change quickly because Salem's Lot, which is the next book we're going to read, I love. which is interesting. And I don't know, I haven't read it in a long time, so maybe I won't like it
And
this
I've
time.
never read it. I'm super excited to read it.
Classic Stephen King vampire tale. It's going to be a little bit of an interesting one.
I love vampires.
I don't know if you can tell me this or if you just want me to find out, but how the format of this book, like how he wrote it with the different perspectives and things like that,
Yeah.
is that common for his books? Is that
it's not uncommon. So there's, generally speaking, he has a very narrative point of view.
Mm-hmm.
So it's usually someone from the town, someone from whatever, telling the story of what happened. But he switches it a lot. So he'll go into like reporter, like that was almost like a reporter feedback of like excerpts from the book. It was from Norma's perspective.
it got scientific for a little
Yeah,
bit
he
too,
had,
which
like-
I thought was really crazy because I knew the book touched on a bunch of religious tones, but I was surprised to
Yeah.
find all the scientific.
The one
parts.
cool thing about him is he does do a lot of research. So when he does books, he will break off onto tangents about the actual validity of whatever he's talking about, if it's real or not. And I think a part of the thing with Stephen King is, I think, and we'll see this as we go through, I think he gets miscategorized a lot as like horror or supernatural or whatever. And I think as you go through some of these books, we're going to realize, I mean, he really can't be categorized. There are some scary books. There are some, like Salem's Lot, I wouldn't consider a horror book. It's a vampire. It's more of a sci-fi fantasy realm book. This was obviously not a horror book. It was more of like a supernatural book. But then we'll get into like Stand By Me, right? Which is a short story, which was a movie. You guys have seen that movie, right? You guys
No.
haven't seen Stand By Me? God, you guys are so young. So there's a movie with River Phoenix and a bunch of other people. Great. It's a great movie. It's based on a short story called The Body, and then Shawshank Redemption, right? So like
One of the best movies I've ever seen.
very not
That's Stephen King.
Stephen King
Yeah.
wrote Shawshank Redemption. Yeah.
I can't wait for that. I'm very excited.
It's a
for
short
that
story.
book.
It's called Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption.
I didn't know it was a short story.
Yeah.
I just knew it was based off of a Stephen King
Yeah.
writing.
It's crazy. So
Yeah,
there's
I'm
a lot.
excited.
It's interesting. Again, I like that we're doing it in chronological order because it's going to give us a pretty cool perspective on how he grew and the differences between the books. And there's going to be books that we hate. There's books that, I mean, I love Stephen King. There's books that I hate. So
I can't wait for it. I
Yeah.
started recently at the beginning of COVID. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm gonna read it, and I got a couple pages in. I've already cried, and then it just life happened. I haven't read anymore. So I guess I shouldn't say this is the second book. I started that one. I
yeah.
only got a
So
chapter
again,
in.
the other main criticism on Stephen King a lot is he sometimes doesn't know how to land the plane. So he'll circle the towers for a while, and then you're like, oh, okay,
Should bring Klaus in for it.
yeah.
It's his favorite movie.
I know, since he likes Pennywise so much.
How old is your son?
Yeah,
Look, talk to his dad.
yeah. Loves
Klaus has seen it. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, it terrifies
He
me.
told his
awesome.
kindergarten teacher that it was his favorite movie, and she asked
She
the class,
immediately called Child Protective
she
Services.
asked the class to use it in a sentence, and he said, "It is my favorite movie." And she's
So
like,
great.
"I don't think the other kids have seen it."
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Let's not send the other kids down that
No, thank you.
craziness.
I think my favorite movie in kindergarten was like Fern Gully.
He's a very weird kid.
It's great. So, all right, cool. So that is our first Stephen King Carrie, which was an interesting book. I didn't not like it. It was a quick read.
Yeah, I mean,
Wasn't
I thought there
hard
was.
to read.
I thought there were some good, like parts. I don't
Yeah.
know.
It felt underdeveloped. Like it.
Yeah, which
mean,
it
it's
should,
not
which makes
long.
a ton of sense, right?
Yeah.
It makes a ton of sense, and it's funny because it's now been done as a movie twice. So, what movie have you guys seen?
I've
Have
not
you
seen
seen-
either?
Oh, you
I've
haven't?
only seen the new one.
So you saw the Chloe Grace Moretz one, not the Sissy
Yeah.
Spacek original one.
I was like, can we talk
Interesting.
about how Carrie's super pretty in that movie?
Yeah, I mean,
she's very pretty.
because I was going back, I said, let me go back and watch it again because I haven't seen it in years, and I was like, should I watch the like old one with Sissy Spacek? And even though she's
We need
not
to watch
not
it. I
attractive,
should
but
watch
like,
it.
then I'm like, wait a second, the other ones with Chloe Grace Moretz, I'm like, what is that about? She's not supposed to be like beautiful, like
No, one of the first lines in this book when you start reading it talks about her like back knee.
yeah,
And then you watch the movie and it's like, she's very pretty. She's like slender and
yeah.
all this stuff.
Well, the girl in Sissy Spacek in the original one is very slender too, but I mean, I think the point, his more driving arc for her character was that she could have been pretty and she could have been normal. It was more her mother's fault that, because she said in the book a few times, like her mother kept making her eat pies and do things because she didn't want her to be attractive or pretty. She would just say, eat your food or whatever.
Yeah. The mother was the worst. The whole
She
thing
was
when she was
the
saw the
worst.
woman sunbathing or
Yeah.
whatever, like it just the worst. Her mother was the worst.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's sad.
There were some really weird choices made during the writing of that book.
You have to also take into account that it was the 70s and he was probably doing all of the drugs.
Probably.
Very true.
I mean,
it was just.
I mean,
the way that they described her getting her period at the locker room, I'm sitting there, I'm like, she's bleeding that hard. The way that they
they're
describe
just trying
it,
to,
she should be going to the hospital.
They're just trying to
yeah.
make it so that you understood the issue. If you watch the original movie, I think they do a good job of the opening scene of her in the locker room. I think
it's an
they
iconic
do it well.
scene. I knew about
is.
it before I ever read the book or saw the movie.
Yeah. Well, the beginning and the end are very iconic.
Yeah, you know
And
about them.
You know about the blood at the end because it's like the picture that everyone sees.
Mm-hmm. The pig blood, the prom.
Yep. Her murdering
But
everyone.
I mean, like, I understand. I think about, when I got my period for the first time, if it was in front of people and then people were chanting and throwing tampons
Especially
on
if
me,
you had
I
no
would've
idea.
gone effing crazy.
Yeah.
As she did. But I do agree that I could see where it was going, but I didn't think that he did excellent job portraying a
100%.
female character.
I think it's fair.
But
I don't
yeah,
think he
I
would
mean-
disagree with that.
I've never written a book, so I can't critique it too hard, I feel.
He's written 500 of them.
Yeah.
So,
So
yeah.
we've got
At
some
the end
time.
of the day, we're not the successful authors
Yeah.
who set the standard of being a successful author.
Who sit at home and yell at Trump on Twitter all day. That's pretty much all Stephen King does now. It's great. He writes books and yells at Trump. All right. Any other, anything else you guys want to cover on this one?
I don't think
I
so.
think I'm
I feel
good.
like I'm good.
So our next fiction book will be Stormfront. If anybody wants to join us, that podcast will be on September 17th.
Love Dresden.
Dresden. It's the first one in the Dresden series. This will be the 131st time I've read this book.
It will be the first
I mean,
time
this will
I've
be
ever
the
read
third,
the book.
third time I've read this book. So you can join us for that one. There's a link on our website at Byte Size Digital to join it. We have to link that up as I'm saying that out loud. And then we are going to be doing Get a Grip, which will be the week before, which will be like September 10th-ish range. So that's also, ironically, it's also fiction since it's a novelized version of a business process book. So we'll be doing that one, which should be a cool one for all you business people out there. And then the next Stephen King book is Salem's Lot. And that will be early in October. We will do that one. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to us at bsd@bytesizedigital.com. Enjoy getting all those emails. And you can also go to our website, and all of our social media is /bitesizesocial. So we will see you there. This will be on YouTube later if anybody wants to watch it. Highly doubt it. And you guys have a great one. For me, once again, my name is Sean Politsky. I'm here with,
Alicia Blackburn.
Meg Teddy.
and we will see you guys. Thanks so much.
Bye.